Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell.
All right, it's time once again for Music Night at the Majestic, and with us tonight, Davy Knowles. Davy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks very much. Cheers.
Yeah, I'll tell you, you have got a lot going on. You've got the new album, What Happens Next? You've got tours going on, so your plate's a little full.
You're not wrong. Yeah, we've kind of gone from 0 to 100 here, you know. It's been overwhelming, but in the most lovely of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you, before we get into the new album, which is really good, that album, there's so many tracks that just got great grooves.
Oh, cheers. Thank you.
To them. But before we get to that, as I often say, every journey starts somewhere. So where did your musical journey start?
Well, back home on the Isle of Man, where I grew up, in between England and Ireland. I was lucky enough to have an older sister, and my dad both had wonderful record collections, and so it was kind of raiding those. I started playing guitar because of Dire Straits, and that was my dad showing me Sultans of Swing on a cassette tape in the car, I think. That was the beginning of it for me, but it just kind of turned into an obsession there. And then as far as playing out, you know, the Isle of Man has such a wonderful, nurturing, friendly musical community, and so many places to play. A lot of pubs in that part of the world, you know. So I was really fortunate, really, to have a wonderful education on a lot of different fronts.
Yeah. Tell me this, are you a big record collector?
I am. You can see kind of part of the problem.
Yeah, I kind of had a feeling there. I thought that was a pretty safe question to ask.
Yeah, I definitely have a problem with it. I love it. I would probably count myself more of a music fan before being a musician. You know, that's my kind of main occupation, is being a music fan. So yeah, I it's one of the things I do out on the road, is I'll try and find a record store and kind of get out of that routine of, you know, venue, hotel, you know, kind of thing that's easy to slip into. So yeah, I go record shop.
Tell me this, what was the first album you ever bought?
Billy Joel, An Innocent Man. That was my first album. I'm still
You got a lot of Joel in your collection, I'm guessing?
I've got all of the Joel. Yeah. I've got all of them. I really love Billy Joel. I think he's a wonder, just a treasure of a songwriter, an important songwriter. You know, I have this argument with my wife every now and then. She's not a Billy Joel fan. And my point is, even if you don't like it, all of those songs, you know, they're such good songs that they're stuck in your head whether you want them or not, you know? They're brilliant.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, actually, we had a question from a viewer, Sarah, who asked or said, you know, I heard you're a big Billy Joel fan. What are your favorite songs of his?
Oh my gosh. There's a song off of the album Stormfront called And So It Goes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, just talk about heartbreaking. And it's written in this very folky kind of way. Despite it being on piano, you know, that doesn't feel like there's any time signature. You can't count along to it. It's like Barbara Allen, which is an old folk song.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real meter to it, but lyrically, it's just absolutely gorgeous, fantastic. That's up there. But then also, you know, the album River of Dreams. There's a song called Minor Variation, which is like a very bluesy kind of moment for him. And it's fabulous. He can turn his hand to anything.
Yeah. For me, New York State of Mind and Scenes from an Italian Restaurant. Those are my two faves.
Absolutely. Just the the kind of ebb and flow of scenes from an Italian restaurant, and that whole. I mean, I learned so much about America from that song. Was it Brenda and Eddie with the popular studies and the King and the Queen at the prom, riding around with a car top down and the radio on. Nobody looked any finer. They were more of a hit at the Parkway Diner. We didn't have Parkway Diners or anything like that. And then there was that moment of, was it, they got a deep pile carpet and a couple of paintings from Sears. I didn't know what Sears was. You know, there was just all of these little kind of tidbits of Americana in there. They couldn't go back to the greases, you know. Just fabulous. Love it.
I mean, it's a suite, and it goes through, so many different styles, throughout the song, but it ends right where it picks up, where it began, and it's a nice closure.
Totally. It's cinematic, isn't it? It's wonderful.
Absolutely. That's a great description of it, because that's one of the things with him is the fact that he's a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
And when you listen, you can hear, or I should say, when you listen to it, you can envision what he's singing about. So
entirely, yeah, it's really vivid. Yeah. He's got a wonderful way with words.
Yeah, well, and actually, Davey, that takes us to another question that we had from Ken, who wants to know, who do you think is the best storyteller when it comes to lyrics?
Gosh.
I'm going to rephrase that a bit. Yeah. Who are some of, because it's impossible to pick the best. Yeah, because it's all subjective. It all depends on what mood you're in.
Totally. I always feel like Mark Knopfler has always been a master of kind of social observation. Even if you look at Sultans of Swing, there's a crowd of young boys in the corner, the brown baggies on, just, again, really vivid. I've always felt like he's been a magnificent storyteller since day one. I don't know. I feel like those kinds of lyrics really have to come from a folk aspect, if you kind of look at folk music as a whole, whether this is blues, whether this is country, whether this is Americana or English folk or Irish folk, all of those traditional songs have some sort of foot in the truth somewhere. If you take like an American song, Irish American song like Down in the Willow Garden, about this murder, this awful thing, and the fella up on the gallows and all that, they have this I don't know, just wonderful storytelling traits. Yeah, so really, if I name people that I'm fans of, like Mark Knopfler, like Paul Simon, or Bob Dylan, or and Joni Mitchell, any number of kind of wonderful songwriters of any genre, really, that have an influence from there. I feel it really all stems back to folk music of some sort. Just there are so many beautiful stories told in that way. They were a method of remembering stories and a method of passing down stories. So I could name a whole bunch of people, but I think it's important to highlight where they actually came from and where that was coming from.
Yeah, I would throw Richard Thompson into that list too.
For sure. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Beeswing is one of the most gorgeous unrequited love stories, and heartbreaking. 1952 Vincent Black Lightning. Yeah, there's so many. Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and he can write a great hook, with it as well.
It's one thing to write a song that's a story. It's another to make it accessible.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and the greatest writers like Richard Thompson are so capable of that. It's magical.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, while we're, it inadvertently wound up with the viewer questions right away. We'll get to a few more of them here. Paul wants to know, what do you think are some of the most iconic guitar riffs of all time?
Well, the big one for me that got me started was Sultans of Swing. Something that's melodic, right? But I don't know, anything that Jimmy Page, anything that's come out of his head, Heartbreaker, oh my gosh, what a great riff. Or I think John Paul Jones wrote, was it Black Dog? Great guitar riff. I mean, there's so much of the Led Zeppelin catalogue that, you know, you want to put your foot on a monitor to and rock out to.
Yeah.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, Layla. There's so much in that classic rock thing. I think a band that's underrated was Free. They had that massive hit "All Right Now," which is probably one of my least favorite songs of theirs, which is often the way, isn't it? But they have a song called "Heartbreaker" as well, which is just a tremendous riff, and "Fire and Water," just fabulous. So I would put something by Paul Kossoff, you know, of Free in there. There's so many.
Absolutely. You mentioned Jimmy Page. Have you ever listened to the stuff that he recorded back when he was a studio musician, playing on other people's records? The one album that comes to mind for me is the Everly Brothers had an album called Two Yanks in England.
Oh, really? I need to get that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you not only get that Everly Brothers harmony, but you hear that early Page guitar.
Fabulous. That's Two Yanks in England, was it?
Yes.
It's a very unflattering album title that they chose. It's I will be sure to pick that up. It's wonderful. I think didn't Jimmy Page play on some Donovan stuff when Donovan was starting to go electric? I've heard some of that.
Yeah.
But no, not as much as I should. And I know his role is he was producer with Mike Vernon for a while from Decca as well, I think he did some of the sessions for John Mayall, Telephone Blues, I think, with Clapton. I think that was an early one. But no, I haven't heard a great deal.
Yeah, it's interesting because you can hear you could hear it. You can tell that's like the early style of Page. So, but yeah. I'll tell you, we got another one here. Ed asks, "Are there any songs where you think the cover version is better than the original?"
I think the first one that pops to mind for me is "All Along the Watchtower," which was a Dylan tune with John Wesley Harding. I think that record, and I love the original, but I feel like Hendrix just took it and ran so far, and it's just, I don't know, you hear it. I never got the chance, obviously, to hear it when it first came out, and I have this sadness of hearing, all of this stuff I'm such a massive fan of. I wish I'd heard in the context of its own time, to really appreciate it. But even now you listen to it and it's just otherworldly. So I think that's probably up there. It's hard to say. Something like "Hey Joe," which is a traditional song. It's hard to say who's got the original version, but I've always thought Roy Buchanan's version of that was the definitive. Rory Gallagher, "As the Crow Flies," from live Irish tour 1974 live.
Another guy who hasn't gotten all the credit that he deserves.
Totally unsung hero, especially over here. In Northern Europe, he was a little more well known, but never, got his just dues. I prefer his version to Tony Joe White's original of "As the Crow Flies" when Rory did it acoustic.
Well, the key to all of those, this is something that we talk about frequently on this show, is when you're going to cover a song, the last thing you want to do is just do a note for note version of it.
Yeah.
When you can take it into a different direction and make it distinctly you while staying true to the song itself, that's when things fall into place.
I agree. And I think also, if you are, if you're playing in a cover band and people want to hear, that's different. That's a whole different discipline.
Right.
It's no better or worse. It's just different. But yeah, if you are planning on doing that, I think you're doing the original writer a disservice. I think it's important to put some of you into that process. And another one that springs to mind is she came in through the bathroom window when Joe Cocker did it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, it's hard to say anyone did a Beatles song better than the Beatles. That's really, really tough to spit out. But
if anybody challenged, that would be one of the recordings.
I think so. Yeah, I think Joe Cocker had a habit of doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll get to one last question here before we get into your music. Jeannie wants to know what a few of your aha moments have been when listening to music.
Well, that's a lovely question. I don't know. I feel like I still get them all the time, and it's just this moment. I think a lot of it, maybe coming from a writer's standpoint, is I really wish I'd written that. That's so fantastic, you know. You're just written. Oh my god, what a great perspective. Sometimes it comes as not just like a musical thing, but just a wonderful way of saying something that has been said a million times. But an aha moment. I think when I first heard Rory Gallagher kind of talking about him, I grew up in a Celtic nation. We heard, the trad sessions, fiddle tunes being played in the pubs, all of this like you would in Ireland. And I was such a massive fan of kind of blues rock, and I dismissed it. And when I heard Rory, to me, that was a bit of a revelation, an aha moment, because I heard him combining the two things. I heard him playing in the way his inflections were. There were these jigs and reels in the rhythm of it. But he was playing this very aggressive, loud electric guitar. So that was a total epiphany for me. Wow, you can combine these things? Wow, this is amazing. Yeah.
Well, and that's really the story of music, because it's always, mixing different ingredients together to come up with something new.
Totally right. And I think again, looking at that, all of what we are listening to and discussing is all folk music that has been shaped and changed over a long time. And I understand to some degree some purists who want to preserve and protect, because I think from a historical standpoint that's really important. But at the same time, I think if you are a listener and all you are concerned about is someone who plays like Stevie Ray Vaughan or plays like Freddie King, and this is amazing, it's amazing that you can, people can attempt to play like that. That's hard. I don't want to do that effort a disservice, but I think it's dangerous. I think music has to evolve and find ways of being relevant in order to be around, to survive. So yeah, I think it's vital that these things change.
Yeah, well, here's the conundrum. I kind of have one foot in both camps, if you will, because to a certain extent, I'm a purist, in as much as I hate to hear something that denigrates the style of music that somebody's doing that came before them.
Sure.
On the other hand, if you are an adamant purist and you can't change anything, the music will never grow. It will stay within the confines of that original version, and that's all it will ever be.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, you've got to bring new things in, change the style or the technique or what have you, if you want it to continue to flourish.
Absolutely. And I think, a healthy respect of what has gone before you and a healthy respect of the genre and a knowledge of it. I think that's absolutely, that's a really important point. I like using the Black Keys as an example. They're a band that are playing arenas that are, hot 100 Billboard artists that have a huge following and a relatively young following. But they also wear their influences on their sleeve. They regularly quote, R.L. Burnside and T. Model Ford and, this whole hill country blues thing. And they are very keen to point out that's where they got their style from. So I think there we have a really fantastic example of someone or a group of people who are very respectful, at the same time wanting to do something different with it and exposing all of that music to a much broader audience.
Absolutely. Dan Auerbach has done a great job working with older artists, and which then opens a gateway for those artists to reach a younger audience.
Right. Yeah, and Jack White's done a similar thing too. They're championing it, aren't they? From all angles. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you go back to the album that Jack White did with the name Loretta Lynn. Yeah. That's two people that you would never in a million years say, you know what, you two should work together.
Right.
However, once you hear it, it's like, wow, I wish you guys would have worked together sooner.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fabulous.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, before we get too far down the road here, we better start talking about your music on it. Well, I'll tell you what, the first album, Roll Away, that album, you kind of came out swinging with that. That is a rockin', album. So from the opening track, Come Home, all the way through. So tell us about making that record.
Well, I mean, Roll Away was what we'd been playing in the pubs on the Isle of Man for a couple of years. It was, I think, like many bands' first records, it was, this is all we know. let's put it down and hope for the best. We got a wonderful opportunity. We worked with a wonderful couple of people on the Isle of Man, Dave Armstrong and Christy DeHaven, and they recognized something in us, brought a manager on board that they knew, who became my manager for a very long time, a wonderful human being, and really championed this. They recognized something, and they wanted to record it, and they wanted to do something with it. And it ended up doing far more than we ever thought it would. We wanted to record it. And that's what got us out to the States, and that's what got us a record deal, and that's what got us touring. And we wouldn't have done anything. I wouldn't have done anything without that. But I think also, we put a lot of rocking stuff on there. It's like Come Home, Too Late, and it'll all come around. But I think from the get-go, I've always been interested in acoustic music. So the title track, Roll Away, was a kind of a Celtic ballad. There was a song called Too Good For Me, which is an acoustic song. There was a song called Stay, which is a kind of a Celtic kind of ballad too, about we lost two friends of ours around that time. So I think it ended up being a good mix of stuff. But yeah, the rocking stuff got us more attention, I think, and got us out and about.
Yeah. Now, with that, you said that got you out on tour, playing small gigs by yourself, but you were also touring with other people.
Yeah.
So what was it like the first time you're the opening act for somebody, and you walk out on stage knowing that people are there to see the folks coming up after you, and you got to win that crowd over?
Yeah, I've never been a particularly competitive person. So we took exactly what we were doing in the pubs and applied it to those big gigs. One of our first big tours in the States with that album was opening up for Kid Rock and Leonard Skinner. So we were doing these massive, great big arenas. 6 months after playing in a pub on the Isle of Man. It was pretty quick. And I think that just kind of naive, kind of green attitude really helped us, because we just went and did exactly what we were doing, and it wasn't. I never thought like, right, you're mine. Let's do this. And we're the great, all of this. I never really did that. I just like kind of playing, and I like keeping my head down and working hard, and that was the attitude I've always had, and kind of went in to those things with, really.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people have said that, it's rather daunting when you go from, say, like you say, playing a pub, and then all of a sudden now you're in an arena and you look around and you see, 100 times more people than what you've been playing to.
That's definitely daunting. It's definitely daunting. And, you do have to learn a degree of stagecraft. If you just stand still and like you would in a pub because you can't move, I think you have to start learning those things of trying to engage people and trying to, I don't know, you don't want it to be at the detriment of the music, though. It's got to be a happy medium. But yeah, I don't know. We just kind of went for it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, with coming up for air, the follow up, there, you expanded your musical style, if you will, on that. Tell us about that album.
Well, that's when Backdoor Slam disbanded after that first record, and it was a record label at the time that persuaded me to do Davy Knowles and Backdoor Slam. They were worried about losing, a fan base that we had found. I hated it, and I regret that, because it was nothing really to do with the other boys in the band. It was a solo album, really, and I regret not having stuck to my guns with the naming of it. But it was really important to me. I mean, one of the reasons why Backdoor Slam disbanded was I felt stuck. I felt like I was, at 21. It's a difficult feeling to have. You want to be able to take anything and run with it. So yeah, I wanted to expand things. I wanted to try different things. I was lucky enough to have met Peter Frampton at this point, and Peter was totally instrumental in gathering the musicians for the record, which was an amazing band. It was Ben Montench from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers on keys, and it was Jackson Brown's rhythm section on bass and drums, Kevin McCormick on bass, and Fritz Lewack on drums, and then Peter on guitar as well for a lot of it. And it was just it was radically different from how we recorded Roll Away, but I was a student. I think that's what I liked about it. That's what I like about music in general, is trying to remain a student. So I got to learn from those guys. I got to learn so much from Peter. And then musically, it was songs that I collected, during a similar time frame, during the time of touring with Backdoor Slam. Some of the songs were even older than that. And I got to do them in a way potentially that I was closer to how I'd heard them, rather than relying on musicians who, this isn't to do with ability, but more stylistically weren't going to be able to get there. I don't mean that as a knock. It just,
no,
I had a very definite kind of sound that I wanted. So yeah, it was a huge step up for me, and it brought quite a lot of pressure as a result.
Yeah. Is there any session from recording that sticks out in your mind?
Yeah. I decided to record this George Harrison tune, "Hear Me, Lord." Not a particularly religious man. I loved the song. I loved it. And we'd gotten through all the tracking of it. We were on the overdub stage, and it was Peter and I were in the recording studio. We're doing the acoustic guitars, and we were doing two together to get this kind of push and pull. If you just play along to yourself, generally it kind of lines up pretty nice, and that it doesn't sound that great. Whereas if you get two guys going at it, you get this lovely push and pull that fills things out. It's really nice. Anyway, I was sat there, next to Peter. We're recording these, and he turns around to me and he says, I remember doing this in 1970, with George. He was sat where you are, and we were recording this. And I'm thinking, I didn't even know you were on this. I was so I feel like an idiot that we're recording it now. You didn't tell me. And he's not credited on the record, but he did the original acoustic guitar parts with George. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. How do you expect me to concentrate after this, That was a pretty special moment.
I would say so, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of gets to the one of those aha moments that
Sure.
that
Sure.
we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you the new album. What happens next?
Mm-hmm.
Is I said at the beginning, so many tracks in this album, Davy, have got a great groove to them.
Thank you.
So for the first one, Light of the Moon.
Yeah.
With the the hey hey chants that you've got in there, I will be amazed if some company who's got Moon in their name, if you don't get a call from an ad agency saying, "Hey, we want to use this," because it's catchy and distinctive. So that could be a little commercial, extra mailbox money for you right there.
My accountant will be very pleased with that result.
And if anybody from an agency is watching, check it out.
That song, I'm a big fan of this band, Tony Mcphee and the Groundhogs. They were this psychedelic blues band from the late 60s and into the 70s in England. Really underrated band. They have this album called Split, which is like a concept album. It's a cracking album. So that was really my response to listening to that a lot. There's this, they do a lot of chromatic stuff, which is what's happening in Light of the Moon, and it's just kind of a little bit psychedelic, and so it was kind of my little mix between the Black Keys and the Groundhogs, really, I think.
Yeah, well, there's that whole mixing things again.
Yeah. If you're a fan of a lot of different music, hopefully it spits out like that. Yeah.
I want to say most of our viewers are. They're pretty hardcore folks. So
brilliant.
Now, other tracks that on that one that are really personal for you, what would they be?
I mean, the biggest one that comes to mind is "If I Ever Meet My Maker," which is the last song on the record. That song means the world to me, and it was really hard to record. In the space of 3 years, I lost my dad. I got married and had my first kid. And I don't know if that's a unique situation on any kind of. I just feel like there was a lot of emotion, a lot of happy, a lot of beautiful, a lot of sad, and an enormous amount of gosh, I wish that my dad were here, to experience this with me. There are so many things I would like to ask him. He travels a lot for his job. There are a lot of parallels, in what I do and what my dad did, and there was so much I wanted to ask him, and so there was what popped out was this kind of song of God, if I could ask you something right now, how did you manage this? How did you do this? It was really kind of a bit of a letter to him, really.
Yeah, it's a nice song. I mean, you can tell it's heartfelt.
Thank you.
So now, also getting back to the groove aspect of it, Solid Ground, One and the Same, both of those have got great grooves to them.
Cheers.
So now, tell me this: when you're writing, are you a music first or a lyric first, or is it just hey, whatever happens type situation?
More often than not, it's music first, and I'll kind of stockpile ideas. But every now and then, and then I'll kind of stockpile lyric ideas, and when I feel like the two go together, then I can start working on it. Or very often, what will happen is I'll start on a musical idea and just singing babble, just total inane, stuff that makes no sense, and something will pop out, and then it's like, all right, grab a hold of that and work outwards from there. But every now and then, a lyric kind of comes, or an idea for a lyric comes, and you kind of have to follow that. But that's rare for me.
Yeah. What is like an example of one of the most unusual inspirations? People have told me, well, I heard this noise or I heard somebody say something, and I thought, wait a minute, there's something there. Did you ever have one of those moments?
I was taking the family dog out for a walk. This is before I'd left the Isle of Man, and the walk goes kind of along this cliff top, and just seeing the cliffs going down to the sea, I ended up writing Roll Away, and I wrote the whole lyric on that walk, and I had to keep talking to myself so I didn't forget the thing. Sorry, muttering along like an idiot, and then I had to write it down when I got. This is the days before, just jot it down. But it helped me refine it, I think, and so I had the complete lyric by the time I got home, and that was from taking the dog out for a walk. But apart from that, no, I think that's probably the weirdest.
Yeah, well, I mean, you never know when inspiration's going to hit.
Right, yeah, that's kind of part of your job as a writer, isn't it? Is to kind of remain open as much as possible,
and be observant.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you mentioned that you were still on the Isle of Man at that point.
Mm.
You're now in our area.
Yeah,
in Chicago.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a culture change.
You're not wrong. Yeah.
What are the things that are uniquely Chicago that you've stood there for a moment and had to think about before they?
Oh, there are a lot. The weirdest thing that I found when I first came here was this idea of if you go into a shop and the transaction, I say thank you, and the response is and I'm kind of left feeling, hang on, is there something else I should say? I just feel like it's just very abrupt, is it yes, you should have thanked me, yes, or is it it comes across as a no problem kind of thing? But I've always felt that was a very weird kind of thing for me.
Yeah. Tell me this: have you found yourself, adding prepositions to the end of your sentences? Because a very Chicago thing is to do something like hey, where's my keys at? Because where's my keys wouldn't do. Yeah,
sure. I am positive. If I go back to the Isle of Man and I go for a drink with my school friends and what have you, I am sure that my accent and my syntax and all this stuff will have changed. It's just a kind of a product of being in a foreign place for a long time. I'm sure I picked up all of that stuff. They'll say that I have an American twang to my accent now, I'm sure.
Yeah. Now, just tell me this, Chicago, besides being a great music city, incredible music city, food, that's another famous Chicago thing.
Oh, yeah.
Of the foods that are distinctly Chicago, what have you found yourself partial to?
I can tell you, I'm not a fan of deep dish pizza. It's just too much. It's too much cheese.
Okay, we got to end this right now. Sorry, Davey.
It is a bit too much cheese for me. But man, I think what makes Chicago really beautiful, and from a food aspect, is just such a wonderful combination of all sorts of different cultures, and so you get this wonderful melting pot. You can get. We recently for our anniversary we went to this incredible Peruvian restaurant out in it was River North area, and it was just spectacular. So I think my favorite thing is the fact that you can get anything and everything at such a high level. It's everywhere. That is amazing. We didn't even have a Mexican restaurant on the Isle of Man, so a taco was totally foreign concept. So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, well, Chicago is what we were saying about with music, a combination of all things, and when you add them together, you get something unique.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, Davey. Well, tell me this. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to make sure that we do? Your upcoming tour dates. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we have a whole bunch of stuff. We're starting to kind of poke our head out of the cave again. And we just finished up an East Coast run. We have a bunch of stuff up on the website. We are, I think we're heading back to the Northeast next month as well. And then Southeast in December. And March, I think we're planning on Texas. We had to reschedule that stuff. So that there's an enormous amount of tour dates coming, and all be up on the website.
All right. Sounds good. Well, tell you what, we've had your website and social media, scrolling across the screen throughout the show, so folks can go there. And of course, if they go to your website, which is appropriately named davyknowles.com, there's links to all your social media straight from there and your YouTube channel as well. So,
super. Thank you.
All right. Well, that said, is there anything else that we didn't get to touch on?
I probably waffled on enough.
All right. Well, tell you what, Davey, it's been fun talking with you.
Oh, likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. All right, everyone. I want to thank you guys for watching. Davey, thanks for being here. Everybody, have a good night.
Cheers.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.